Members, at the break, we were still in debate, and Marco City is slated to take the floor. I presume that we are now ready. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to have this opportunity once again to stand in this place to lend my voice to the chorus of voices from Marco City, and by extension, Bahamians who are challenged, but not just those that are challenged, but those who are seizing opportunities available in this incredible country. I thank God for life and an opportunity to contribute as a public servant to the further development of our country. Madam Speaker, I've been consistent in my public service in making similar points for more than 3 decades. One of those points, Madam Speaker, is that no group of Bahamians have a monopoly on loving the Bahamian people and being concerned about a particular demographic. Those that represent that view must know that it is a dishonest point of view. And any blueprint is just that, a blueprint. It is not the blueprint. And this nation-building exercise that we engage in requires contributions from various stakeholders across the political divide: civil society, the private sector, faith-based organizations, and the like. I've been consistent, Madam Speaker, in making the point that we all have an obligation to find common ground on those matters that transcend our political labels. When non-communicable diseases are impacting our people, none of them check to see which political organization, Jankunu group, or denomination we belong to. The same thing is true about crime. The same thing is true about persons who find themselves below the poverty line, who we have to spend an inordinate amount of money to create a safety net to rescue them, to assist them until their change comes. So, Madam Speaker, it is most unfortunate that the nature of our politics is such that we are unprepared more often than not to find common ground in order to be of benefit to people who need us. Most of us, Madam Speaker, in this place are able to fend for ourselves fairly consistently. And one of the reasons persons figuratively and sometimes literally hoist us on their shoulders, hold our hands, squeeze a $20 bill in our hands toward a particular cause, is because they believe we represent a hope, that we are being positioned as facilitators to assist them in fulfilling their dreams and aspirations and the dreams and aspirations of their children. And we do them a disservice when we do not seize every opportunity to turn over every stone, to extend the olive branch to others who might help us be more effective in solving the issues. Those persons who put us on their shoulder, who assist us, who go in countless kitchens to bake the pan of macaroni and cheese, who sell the supper tickets, who make the phone call, send the text, in defense of the cause for which we are fighting. Madam Speaker, as tempted as I am, I will not retreat from that position, that while I am proud to represent the party I've committed many years to, that wherever there's an opportunity to cross the divide in order to find common ground, to help those that are vulnerable, to unlock opportunities, I am prepared unashamedly to do so. The challenge that we have, Madam Speaker, and by way of you to citizens throughout the Bahamas, is when policymakers retreat to their separate corners, and draw a line in the sand, not being prepared to come together on important life and death issues. The thousands of persons who support us, they themselves become tune deaf to the other side because of their admiration and support for their team. And when they become tune deaf, even warnings, admonitions, or encouragement from the other side is of no consequence to them, and they are often victimized and hurt by it. So, Madam Speaker, this business of demonizing, this business of calling others absolutely evil in this place, it's not only a bad idea, it is a non-start, it's non-productive to this nation-building exercise. Madam Speaker, this budget is extremely important in determining the future direction of our nation, which sits at the crossroads where we collectively must engage in sober, honest conversation about both the challenges and the opportunities that are ahead, and to look at ways how we can construct a strategic plan to transform our country as we work in concert with all of our stakeholders. Madam Speaker, we have tinkered around the edges in much of the discussion here. The truth is there is a need for structural adjustments, a serious and focused effort at diversifying our economy and reforming the public service, not just processes and the procedures, but also the culture and the administration of it. The truth is we've come a long way since independence, and even further since majority rule. The fortunes of many of our citizens have improved dramatically over the last 5 decades. We have constructed an economy that provides us with a standard of living and income per capita that places us roughly third behind Canada, the United States. An increasing number of our citizens, Madam Speaker, have become owners of this economy and now either own land or buildings that their foreparents could only dream about. Some parents have lived long enough to see the fruits of their 6th grade education, my mother, Sister Laura Benson, manifested in their children, like many of the men and women in this chamber. The children who have gone on to get associates, bachelor's, master's degrees, or other professional designations in technical and vocational areas, either locally or from universities around the world. And wherever we have gone, we've demonstrated that we are as smart as anyone else, anywhere else in the world. Madam Speaker, our athletes in multiple disciplines have demonstrated that we are as gifted as anyone, anywhere else in the world. They have won global medals in track and field, swimming pools, on cycles. Some of our sons and daughters who hail from these islands, Keys, Rocks, show brilliance in baseball. Go out and vote for Jazz Chisholm to be in the All-Star. Footballs on the softball field, judo mats, and sailboats in beautiful Elizabeth Harbor, or the foreshore of Montague, or New Bycat Island. We've graced Wimbledon courts and displayed Bahamian exceptionalism. We are not just good boxers. In all respects, we have been punching well above our weight class at world forums and in corporate boardrooms, sharing our intellectual might or fighting for causes bigger than our political or racial tribes. Sir Lyndon demonstrated that, Madam Speaker, and he was followed by other Bahamians, while a student at Tuskegee University had the opportunity to testify at the United Nations calling for the end of apartheid. Madam Speaker, to channel Marion Bethel, whenever we doubt who we are, we just need to behold all that we have and will continue to accomplish. And she puts it this way we now. Survivors of the Middle Passage, offspring of the collision between Europe and Africa, living now in this hurricane alley in these shallow seas. Our artists and artisans in various genres continue to excite the sense and sensibility of the world as we share our unique vision and our unique creativity and creations two to the world. I would say Saxons in your belly, but two to the world.
No, you were doing good, Edie. You were doing good.
We have so much to be proud of, so much to be appreciative for. However, as we debate this budget, we have much that we must address, and we must address it with a sense of urgency, fueled by a commitment to country that is stronger than our labels. Madam Speaker, I listen with some degree of dismay as I listen to colleagues who I admire greatly doing the traditional politics by making the point that members opposite that somehow those of us who sat in cabinet just found our voices. I'll come to that in a moment, Madam Speaker. And so when I talk about a sense of urgency, Madam Speaker, while sitting in the cabinet of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, serving as a minister in our last administration, I sat right over there and stood on my feet and made this point, that any debate about whether or not we should have confidence in our administration and our leader was a non-starter for me. That wasn't a debate I was particularly concerned about. I was more concerned about us being better than our present selves and living up to our potential. And I then warned that we must make sure we have a greater sense of urgency and guard against arrogance that have toppled past administration and had the potential to topple ours. Madam Speaker, I commend that to this administration, particularly those that are new, because seasons change and they change fairly quickly. We must have a sense of urgency fueled by a commitment to country that is stronger than our partisan labels. We must make structural adjustments in our economy, inclusive of diversifying our economy by creating new sustainable streams of revenue and reducing our over-reliance on foreign imports of food and other goods and services that we consume routinely. Madam Speaker, we must create a more unjust and equitable tax system, both corporately and for the average citizen. And that is why we urge this government in this budget, they ought to have addressed the development of the white paper and outline the schedule for discussing with this public what their plans are about a more robust regime around generating revenue and what is their vision for the future in terms of removing the regressive VAT tax. What are the plans that they have? Thirdly, Madam Speaker, we must, as a priority, discontinue just talking about crime as some nebulous, vague concept, but we must, as a priority, groom and socialize our people in a holistic manner that helps us to manage anger better, cope with personal and family shame better, overcome lack and poverty better, value each other better, cope with relationship challenges better, so that crime in general, violent crime in particular, and even more specifically, domestic violence in particular, discontinue eating away at, and in some cases, destroying the gains we are making in other areas in this country. It's amazing, we dedicate a tremendous amount of time to attract, as under Dionisio de Aguilar, some 7 million tourists to our shores. And one violent act has the potential to unravel a sterling reputation and negatively impact bookings for the next quarter and the quarter after. We must find a way to fight more effectively and in a coordinated way on the preventative side. And what we do on the preventative side must be even more significant than the fight in detection, in intervention, in the punitive or the correction side. Madam Speaker, fourthly, our ultimate fortune as a country is dependent on our ability to educate our children and build the overall capacity of our people for wholesome, well-rounded living, but also to compete in this global village. Politicians often have a bad habit of convincing people that once you are attached to them, you Gucci. Sorry, you're good. When the reality is that if we don't build capacity of our people, they will not be competitive. They will not have the quality of life that they need. And when we are unavailable, as some politicians often are not available, then they find the residents find themselves wanting. And so, Madam Speaker, today we ask this government to, certainly the Prime Minister has an opportunity left in his wrap-up to talk about that comprehensive plan that will help us as a country slow the bloodshed in our streets, slow the bloodshed in our schools and in our homes. And while we know it is not his and his administration's responsibility alone, that it is a shared responsibility, we are expecting leadership, true bipartisan leadership. To date, that is not a fact. So, Madam Speaker, I use the analogy of a hurricane. Before a hurricane comes, when there's even a tropical storm warning, there are clear preparatory steps that are taken by countries. People go and get supplies, they batten up their houses, we put out public service announcement, and we do a host of things as the member for Pinewood is presently doing. And Madam Speaker, when a hurricane hits, there are certain actions that we take and certain things we ought to be doing in the aftermath of the hurricane. Well, we are having as a country a hurricane of violence, a clear uptick in violence in the country, and what I do not see is proper preparation by this administration. The leadership is sorely lacking. People do not get a sense that we have a sense of urgency, that we feel the pain. And oftentimes, even when persons show up on the scene, meeting grieving families, it appears that we are doing the obligatory things, the things we are obligated to do as policymakers, rather than our hearts still crying out for a country that is bleeding. Madam Speaker, we must facilitate the empowerment of Bahamians to own a piece of our patrimony. This land belongs to us, and we ought to be the primary beneficiaries of the resources of this country. Madam Speaker, if we are not careful, if we are not vigilant, we run the risk of losing much of what our foreparents have fought for. In the process, Madam Speaker, we must clearly define and regulate how we may benefit from other nationalities who we invite into this country. However, we must invite them in on our terms, and they must engage, whether blue collar or white collar, whether they have average income or they are filthy rich. When they come to the Bahamas, we must always maintain our pride and right of place and determine how we engage with them. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, what is often equally dangerous is xenophobia. We must have a real conversation with the population. Grand Bahama, a part of the success of the future Grand Bahama, is also dependent on building the critical mass of people in Grand Bahama. We can fund, as we did under the Free National Movement, many micro and small business enterprises, but if there isn't the critical mass in order to help these business find clientele in order to sell their goods and services, we would have made one step forward only to possibly experience 2 steps backwards. And so we must invite Bahamians and others, but on our terms, to become a part of the nation-building exercise. Madam Speaker, ours is a mission to build a society where our citizens and residents enjoy a quality of life that's a model, that's envied by others. We are, in large measure, as policymakers, Madam Speaker, elected to help facilitate our people's dreams and aspirations. A newly elected government ought not be releasing people who've been duly hired, submitted all the requisite applications, not signing in and going out to do politics, but staying on a job and delivering in departments where they are needed. And yet, we talk about a new day for them, but their new day is rank with unemployment because they have been released. And we continue to hear the tired argument of who has done it before. Madam Speaker, the reality, whoever has done it before, it was wrong then and it is wrong now. Many persons who have signed contracts, whether they work in a ministry or they have a contract providing a service, have been summarily dismissed. Some folks mortgaged their house to buy a piece of equipment and went through a process to obtain a contract in a transparent way, only to be released. Madam Speaker, as a country, we have to make some radical adjustments in this political paradigm. We have an opportunity to behave and do better and differently. There are persons who have worked hard, who today have not been paid in a number of ministries, while persons who are powerful, who are moneyed, degreed, who have name, face recognition and political access are getting settlements. In some cases, these settlements, the terms we are told, are not being discussed with the public. And only pressure caused the release of some of that information. Madam Speaker, we can and must do better, be different. Generally, Madam Speaker, we need to build a country that's based on meritocracy, where talent and skill set open doors and create opportunities, where political allegiances are secondary and should not be the chief determinant on whether or not you could get in or move up. The collective genius of our people can help us soar, Madam Speaker, but we must value all of our people. And this government, while in opposition, promised to govern for all Bahamians. But unfortunately, some have come in with a different agenda, and failure to put in place mechanisms or lack of confidence that they will be able to manage the sustained growth of the economy means that they are not creating opportunities based on growth and development, but oftentimes creating opportunities for supporters by releasing others who have been in place. We can be better and do better. Madam Speaker, I would love to see us work together to create the kind of society where on the various indexes around the world, we are seen as a shining example, whether it's Transparency International, whether in the area of governance, it's the World Governance Indicators, or in quality of life, the Global Passport Index, or whether it's a Bloomberg Healthiest Countries Index, or the World Health Organization holding us up as an exemplary nation in terms of how we are taking care of our people. Madam Speaker, we are stronger together, and embracing our diversity and leveraging our varying strengths will augur well for our country. Madam Speaker, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if this Davis-Cooper administration would ensure that in all of the heads of agreement that we sign, because we've signed many as a country, and under both administrations, Madam Speaker, we often put it in place, but in the absence of a monitoring agency, we are not enforcing the terms of the heads of agreement. So we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity because of what we did in agriculture. 40% of all food that is to be consumed or sold through hotels, through restaurants, through food stores, must come from local Bahamian producers. Having it as a policy is one thing. Having a monitoring unit that follows through is another, Madam Speaker. The same thing is true in light manufacturing. So there's a wonderful opportunity for agriculture and BAIC and all of the relevant agencies to work in tandem with each other, the ministry with responsibility for economic development, to insist upon foreign direct investment, which we absolutely need for those persons to buy as much as possible locally. $1 billion worth of food that we import every year. 650 million of it, fresh fruits, vegetables, proteins, etc. 400 million or so processed foods. Madam Speaker, one of the serious discussions we need to have as a country is that we can make the private sector the employer of choice, rather than young people growing up often believing that they must get a government job to have stability and to sustain their families. Madam Speaker, where economic growth and increased demand is not creating space for many of the persons coming out of school, we have to rethink the strategies that we are using. Madam Speaker, this ought to be a rules-based society. A society when investors reach out to us, they expect a checklist of items they need to submit, actions they need to take in order to ensure that their project comes to a start in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, as a country, we have not done well in this regard, and money has fled this jurisdiction. My concern under this New Day government is that failure to comply with some of the basic laws in our country is sending the wrong message both domestically and internationally. Madam Speaker, I would come very specifically to examples of how we are squandering wonderful opportunities. But first, let me deal with the lack of candor and truthfulness about some things. First, Madam Speaker, in the budget 2021 and 2022, you would see that the former administration had projected that the debt to GDP ratio would decline to 87% debt to GDP. This point was clearly outlined, and no doubt you would have a copy of it. So we found it rather puzzling why this administration, knowing that the same technical staff would have inserted it in your speech, to lay claim to the fall in GDP from a little over 100 down to 87 as being a result of the work done by this New Day government. We predicted it. So, Madam Speaker, I wish to correct the record, and any suggestion by the Prime Minister that his administration is responsible for the decline in the debt to GDP ratio from near 100% debt to GDP back down to 87%. Madam Speaker, it is documented. So you can go, if you are interested in extra reading, and look at the fiscal summary presented in the budget for the year 2021-2022. And if you don't have a copy, we would be more than happy to provide it. Madam Speaker, let me again thank the New Day government, the Prime Minister and his deputy and his members for continuity in government in this regard. For the truth of the matter is, they have found policies that initially criticized, the vast majority of them, particularly in the area of finance, they have maintained. Madam Speaker, the government has often talked about public-private partnerships and how important it is to this administration. And one of the reasons they often talk about public-private partnership is because they know that in this budget, there isn't sufficient resources to accomplish the promises that they have made. So one of the things that is often talked about is that we will engage in public-private partnership to meet this need and that need. To date, we have not seen the government's public-private partnership policy. And we invite the New Day government to lay that public-private partnership agreement on the table. We'll talk about a few of the initiatives they're presently engaged in, and to find out exactly how was that executed. Madam Speaker, the former administration not only talked about public-private partnership policy, but one was written. And I'm certain it's on file. So, Madam Speaker, we'd be more than happy to lay that. And so, Madam Speaker, it can't be that public-private partnership becomes a term that is a catch-all. Anything that we are doing with anyone falls within that category. There ought to be some transparent rules that this government face to keep us out of problems. Madam Speaker, we have asked this administration in multiple ways to share with the public the various contracts that it has signed since coming to government. We've asked in the House, we were ignored. In fact, the member for Cat Island, Rumkins in Salvador, said on his feet he has no intention of complying. So did the Financial Secretary and the minister that sits in the Senate as well, who deal with financial matters. Madam Speaker, this government does not have the luxury or the right to simply not obey the law, particularly given their pension, their veracity with which they are seeking to hold, as they should, the former administration accountable. Saying that they intend to change the law is not an excuse for not complying with the law. It is a demonstration of arrogance, and more importantly, it reveals their willingness to call others to live by one set of rules while they continue to live by another set of rules. This government ought to lead by example. The member for Exuma and Ragged Island was consistent, to his credit, in calling for the Free National Movement when he was in opposition to be consistent in following the recommendations made by the IMF and live up to our commitment to provide information on COVID spending. Surely, the member for Exuma and Ragged Island is cringing internally that he now sits in government and the very thing that he fought for, his party, his government is in violation of. And I know if he was in charge, he would seek to do something differently.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
The member for Marco City asserted that the member for Exuma, whilst in opposition, called on the then administration to follow the recommendations of the IMF. That doesn't sound like something the member from Exuma would do, Madam Speaker. I had significant concerns about the coziness of that administration with the IMF. I called for good governance. I called for following the terms of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and that's probably what the good member recalls. But, Madam Speaker, I just want the record to be accurate.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I seem to remember that the member called fairly consistently for an accounting on COVID spending. And I seem to remember also that he talked. Let me just complete it. Yep. Yes. Yeah. But which agency was he in contact with, and we made a commitment to? No. So, Madam Speaker, the point I was making simply is that the member for Exuma and Ragged Island called on the government to follow any commitments we made, inclusive of the law. And speaking of Fiscal Responsibility Act, let me just move quickly with respect to that. This administration, Madam Speaker, was obligated by law to lay the fiscal strategy report in the House and refused to do so, and had a senior public servant tell the rest of us who are elected that we're not going to waste time with bringing that to the House for discussion, though the law required it. That same report committed this administration to signaling what they intend to do, what measures they're going to put in place in terms of creating greater fiscal space so that we're not spending much of what we earn on servicing debt. It committed this administration to come up with a strategy on how we're going to grow the economy, how we're going to address critical issues, what their strategies are around diversification and a whole range of issues. This administration has come in, changed the projected numbers inclusive of what deficit we are going to be operating at under their first budget. All changes that they consider, Madam Speaker, it is required by law for them to come to this place and let's have a discussion about, help us understand what incredible, amazing things have happened to dislodge you from the document that mandates you in your budget to follow the fiscal strategy report. As I said before, there is one rule as it relates to complying with the law for the Progressive Liberal Party's government, and there's a rule for everybody else. They ought to comply with the law. So every financial document they can identify, that's just a second one that I'm talking about, they seem to have a problem complying with it. Madam Speaker, the member for Freetown, as we talked about the request we have made for this government to follow the Procurement Act, I thought he laid out a very logical, coherent case that we ought to pursue getting that information through the Freedom of Information Act. Madam Speaker, I remind the country, in this House we requested that the Prime Minister and all of his ministers who are in charge of agencies publish, as they are required by law, to publish all of the contracts that they have issued. I think it is all of those that are exceeding some $25,000. Madam Speaker, we also wrote the Prime Minister, and I can table that letter. I brought it for you, Madam Speaker, and for members of the House. And again, we got no response. We have, through the Shadow Minister for Finance, through the Public Accounts Committee, made a request of all the various government agencies, so that process has started. And again, given the track record, we are not optimistic about their willingness to comply. This is not an administration that's big on complying. It's big on pursuing others to comply, and no doubt finding legal remedies if they do not comply, but they themselves are unwilling to comply. And so, Madam Speaker, we looked at the Freedom of Information Act and discovered that the provisions in it that would compel a government, if the government was willing to be lawful, to provide the information on who all they are giving contracts to. What is it that's being hidden by this administration? Where they're spending possibly hundreds of millions of dollars, why would they not reveal who are receiving the contracts? What are the terms of the contract? How long the contracts are going to run for? We can't get the information. But the Freedom of Information Act, which is another avenue through which we are trying to get the information, is not enforced at the moment. So those provisions, member for Freetown, we are unable to get the information through that means. But the interesting thing, Madam Speaker, is this administration indicated that it will put in place a pilot project, and they identified all of the ministries that the pilot project will affect in terms of the implementation of the Freedom of Information. Come November, 1 year would have passed since this administration made that announcement, and to date, we have no update on the status of Freedom of Information. And so, Madam Speaker, I think I've identified now about 4 pieces of legislation, 3 of which this government is in violation of. The same administration that continues to talk about the lack of transparency and accountability in the former administration, and to the extent that you do so, you have our support. We want every government, including ours, to be compliant, and when persons are in violation of the law, we support them as members of the family, but we are not going to support any wrongdoing. So we are also asking you to live up to that and stop breaking the law as it relates to the Procurement Act, the Fiscal Strategy Act, the Debt Management Act. All of these, this administration is in violation of. Madam Speaker, and they are unrepentant. We ask during the discussion of Pinecrest, can you lay some critical documents on the table? Madam Speaker, under the leadership of this Free National movement, we believe that it's important to have turnkey operations, so building homes as you are doing is important. We applaud that. We believe it's also important to sell land. What we also believe, though, is that government has to lead by example. So not having an environmental impact study done, or hydrology study, or complying with town planning and subdivisions. All of these are worrisome developments because many private businesses and developers, their businesses have been stalled by successive administrations because of the slow pace of this machinery. But yet, the government itself is unwilling to lead by example by allaying any concerns and fears that homeowners will have a problem down the road by laying the required document. And so this administration is willing to just bully its way through by not complying with the law. And that is something, Madam Speaker, this public is taking notes. Madam Speaker, one of the major concerns that we have is that it is easy to put things in a blueprint for change. One of the things this administration said that they fully intended to lead in terms of transparency and accountability in government. I've just laid out, Madam Speaker, at least now 4 pieces of legislation where that is not the case. Madam Speaker, we were berated yesterday by members who we have tremendous admiration for, saying that the things we are talking about now, they never heard. We just found our voice. I want to lay a couple of documents for you, Madam Speaker, because some of the same persons who are talking, they've been in the House a long time. And while they were in the House, Madam Speaker, their administration had significant problems that resulted in them, the administration being kicked out of government. But we were politically mature. And if it's problematic because I broadened it, let me be specific. I was quite politically mature with them. I didn't say to them, where was your voice? I didn't hear you on that particular issue that landed y'all in trouble. Or that issue. Or that issue. They may have had the discussion in cabinet, Madam Speaker, but in this place, where we observe them, or out there on the road, crickets. Didn't hear their voice. We didn't hear the fire. We didn't see the passion. We could then say they must have been complicit in all of those actions. I don't know. But Madam Speaker, while I was a member of cabinet, and I will table a couple of articles for you, on the Speaker, your predecessor, I said, on matters where he went entirely too far. I was prepared to say it, not just here, out there, Madam Speaker. So this misrepresentation of who we are, or as if we have ever been scared, we don't pat and powder and we don't duck and dodge. We found our voice decades ago and still have it. Madam Speaker, on the pay raise, when we were considering whether or not to raise the salary of members of Parliament, one of the points that was made outside of this place, on the road, was that we did not intend to move on that until such time as we had addressed the more fundamental issues affecting the Bahamian people. That was a greater priority than what was being considered, which is justifiable. Members of Parliament not making anything of any significance, right? However, the statement was made. And so I'll table it for those who wish to read it. On the record, having said it, I had a voice then, still have a voice now, carried in the dailies. In the aftermath of Dorian, one of the things that, points that were made, sitting right there, is that we needed to have a sense of urgency, a greater sense of urgency, Madam Speaker, and that we ought to guard against, as an administration, of arrogance, because it had toppled administrations before. That's why the member for West End and the member for Carmichael had left us for a period of time. He was a part of an administration that was afflicted with those conditions. And so God has blessed him to come back now. The arrogance. Administrations tend to get infected. And so, Madam Speaker, we are now in opposition. And some say that was a part of our affliction. And already I see the seeds. Probably the Minister of Agriculture has watered them and now they're germinating. The seeds of arrogance. The seeds of arrogance growing. I'm hearing it. growing. No, you get a cultivation, my brother. You get my support. You get my support. So, Madam Speaker, I'll table this. So every time they want to ask where was our voice, the voice has been documented. But even independent of what has been carried, we have never shirked from our responsibility internally or externally to speak truth to power. And that's why we say where there's wrongdoing, we support government action to make sure it's dealt with. But the question is, how good are you doing with your own? We'll come to that in just a minute, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, another example that we are unclear on and we are hoping that the government would clarify for us. The administration insists that they are following the law. I've identified 4 acts that they're in violation of. There may be another, Madam Speaker. We are wondering that the $20 million that has been identified as a loan to the Ministry of Housing, we wish to understand where in the budget that is booked. And so, Madam Speaker, let me raise just a few questions. In Section 16 of the Debt Management Act, Madam Speaker, it makes the point that the Minister of Finance is the one who expressly signs off and approves loans. The law stipulates that the Minister of Finance is the sole borrowing agency for the government. Further, 16(4) stipulates that all monies borrowed by the government must be paid into the consolidated fund. Have the proceeds from this loan been deposited into the consolidated fund? By virtue of the Housing Act, there are no powers conferred on the ministry or minister as a corporate sole to be able to borrow funds. And even in instances where there are loans that encumber the government as a guarantor, those guarantees would have to be approved by Parliament. So again, we need to see the loan agreements, the terms, and obtain confirmation that in all aspects the relevant laws and policies have been applied. Now, this may be a non-issue, but we would like to see the documents. We didn't get a chance to see the environmental impact assessment before. We didn't get a chance to see the subdivision, the approvals for subdivision and town planning act. We know for a fact that there was no consultation with the people on Pinecrest. And again, we are happy when Bahamians get home. That's a good thing. But let's follow the law. And so, Madam Speaker, we came to understand from press reports, which we have brought and prepared to table, that in May 2022, the Ministry of Housing entered into this $20 million loan agreement with a company called Simplified Lending and Proven Wealth Management. We do not see in the budget the disbursements for this loan proceeds or any portion related in the annex of the budget. And so we looked on page 37, we may have missed it, so if there's another section, we'll be happy to look at it. We also note that there is only $1.5 million allocated in the capital budget of the Ministry of Transport and Housing, the budget for subdivision. I think that's page 212. Given that this was reported as a loan to the government, we need to know where is it being booked. Also, by law, any expenditure against this loan must be appropriated by Parliament. And so, Madam Speaker, we would greatly appreciate if the relevant documents would be made available to the Bahamian people. We got some documents yesterday, and we're going to come back and deal with that matter by the member for Carmichael. Madam Speaker, did you see the document? You couldn't read it. It was a blurry document. It was redacted. I mean, it's quite an amazing thing. Now, we're not doubting that it may be correct, the content of it, but I didn't know you could lay a document of that quality in the House of Assembly. But we'll definitely come back to that. But what I do know on that particular subject is I think ambassadors are unable to approve and spend funds. And I just have this suspicion, Madam Speaker, that the government is aware of all the details related to that matter. So what may have been useful is for the member for Carmichael to in fact reveal what all the details are concerning that. In other words, since an ambassador cannot approve the funds, who did?
Was it approved by government?
Who did? No, that doesn't matter, but I'm saying who did. So rather than be cute and cheeky, the question is, who did?
Really want to know?
Of course we want to know. We support law and order. It's a country of laws. But this drip feeding exercise this administration is absolutely committed to continued yesterday. Drip feeding. Salacious, titillating details, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just before I leave the housing loan, we would like to know, Madam Speaker, back to the procurement law that we know that this government is in violation of, what procedures did the government go through in terms of procuring the resources that they did? Was there competitive bidding? What procedures did this administration follow? We've heard of even companies that are doing audits. How was that executed? We know in the budget, for example, I believe the government has somewhere around $16 million for consultancies. There's an additional $6 million that's in there. Again, we want to understand a bit more about that. We understand that there's a company who, I understand, high caliber persons working for them, the McKinsey Group that's working for the government. And again, they worked for the previous iteration of the Progressive Liberal Party. And at that time, it was not declared. And the public found out later. And this is no aspersion on the company itself or their executives. This is about good governance and the practices of government. The question is, what procedures are they on contract? Is that the case? What services? What is the scope of work? What are the terms of the contract that they are engaged in? That is extremely important. And because there are so many nationalists in the House and on the government side, the question is, were Bahamians given an opportunity to compete for those lucrative contracts? Madam Speaker, all of these are matters where it appears when we ask the question, the government just bullies its way through and refuses to comply with the law. People are watching, Madam Speaker. So we'd like to know, did they follow the Procurement Act? Did they give our people, the Bahamians, an opportunity to compete? Because after all, this administration loves to talk about our patrimony and their commitment and love for the Bahamian people and a desire to wipe every tear from every eye. But hungry mouth got to feed, and if you aren't giving people an opportunity to be competitive in the bidding process, then one has to question the commitment to end the hunger pains. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to change the trajectory of BPL. The Prime Minister now, the member for Kell Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, have all the pieces in his hands. Imagine that, Madam Speaker. The board you desire, the CEO you desire, who moved from regulator to CEO in 24 hours, I think it was. Now, obviously, that's permissible if there's an agreement on both sides, documented in writing. I'm not insisting that we see it, but it would be nice to see it. The Prime Minister has all the pieces in his hand. So, Madam Speaker, I want to spend at the tail end of my presentation a significant amount of time looking at BPL. It's very important. A part of the drag on economic development in the Bahamas is the cost of energy. And I know this is very important to the Prime Minister. He talked about increasing the mix of renewables in providing energy to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Prime Minister has all of the pieces in his hand. So there are no encumbrances. The board you want, the management team that you want, a minister that is completely compliant. Again, Madam Speaker, it's a wonderful opportunity for the Prime. I want to go down there for a minute, Prime Minister, before I come back to energy. So one, because we are concerned about the financial state we're in, clearly this government has determined it's going to make lots of promises and they will borrow in order to fulfill them. That's absolutely clear. And so just before I touch on that, I just want to I want to touch on something. I saw a standing ovation. I thought it was something, it was for Cat Island man, I was happy for you. Disappointed that they missed the point, but I was happy for you that you were given a standing ovation. Because there were things you talked about, Prime Minister, by way of you, that I knew touched the Bahamian because they felt hopeful. A raise for teachers, a raise for nurses. I mean, I was excited because I believe as a country we have failed nurses who are fleeing in droves. 300 of them we were short of before we demitted office. But Prime Minister, less than 24 hours later, okay, that's too close. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, the folks who were titillated, who were excited, my understanding is that things ain't going too well with the New Day government and those groups. It's my understanding that some of you may have to be excused at some point today or tomorrow to have a discussion because progress is not being made. The nurses, for example, I believe their position is that they have no industrial agreement. They're still waiting. A number of them are complaining as they complain under us. And I thought in a new day we would deliver something different about horrible working conditions under which they are laboring. And they said if it's $3,000, $1,500 now and $1,500 if you don't leave later, that's a non-starter. So they're concerned. I'm concerned about a 74-year-old man from Grand Bahama who lost his daughter in August. I believe it was August 17 to COVID, Prime Minister. And he has been waiting to get the compensation that we promised this government, no doubt, should be honoring. And he's still waiting. And she died from COVID. So I'm just saying that there are a number of nurses, healthcare workers, a commitment was made that they would be their families would benefit in the unfortunate event that they died. And so no, there are again, Prime Minister. Well, let's not get distracted. The point is, your administration has the information. Your administration has the information. And so, Madam Speaker, we are asking on behalf of those nurses, their families who have not yet been compensated, to please. It's in hand. Your colleague has it. So we're just asking for finance to assist, so that we. Well, again, I'm just pointing out that nurses who you excited, many of them have a variety of issues. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Tall Pines.
Me and the member of Marco City is familiar with this case. He reached out to me as it relates to the individual that has been impacted. The information was forwarded to nursing department at the ministry. And the whole issue revolves around the cutoff date associated with the compensatory package for individuals who died on the job. I didn't want to bring this to the forefront, but there was a specific date that has been allocated, and this particular case fall out of that date. But irrespective, it's something that we're looking at because someone has been impacted. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much. So, Madam Speaker, I was making the point, and I would appreciate if colleagues, in light of the fact that we're talking about two constituencies, educators and nurses who are in dire straits in many cases, if our attitude would reflect the severity of this situation. Madam Speaker, our teachers who were titillated in the budget. It was an interesting list, and every item mentioned, so I don't fault your administration for the themes. The themes were good themes. The problem is the devil is in the details, and the details were not good details. So teachers today, educators today, are not pleased with what has been put on the table. In fact, most of them are unclear on what the details are. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm just making the point. It is easy to bomb. It is easy to bomb on the table when we say we're going to do this for nurses, we're going to do this for teachers, we're going to do this for all of these categories of persons. What we have to do is deliver on behalf of these persons. I don't doubt the Minister of Education commitment. I'm just saying we have to deliver. Because the more we delay, the more we squander we squander an opportunity, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hear the absolutes, but one of the things we did do, Madam Speaker, in the area of energy, we left something that the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador gave birth to. I think it's in 2015, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador came up with a wonderful idea with his team about the rate reduction bond. It certainly was during your time. And I regret that we did not get to execute it. Permit me to finish it. And so here we are. But I know you can deal with it. I know you're going to deal with it in the wrap-up. But let me just help the public. Unfortunately, BPL has a legacy debt that's dragging us down. I understand that we're having challenges dealing with recurrent expenditure, as well as dealing with the capital works that we have forecasted we would take care of. And so we have to figure out then, are we going to utilize the rate reduction bond? And if we are not going to utilize the rate reduction bond, what is the alternative? And so we're asking the Prime Minister in his wrap-up to indicate what is the solution in raising money, because we know BPL doesn't have it and this government doesn't have it unless it goes to borrow. And we know that this government will be back here soon to borrow more money based on the candies that have been put in this budget, and the revenue stream will not deliver the revenue to give to those persons who they've been promised candy. And so, Madam Speaker, on the energy front, what does the Prime Minister intend to do to raise money to retire the legacy debt, to ensure that we do the necessary capital work, and that we can manage all of the recurring expenditure? Secondly, Madam Speaker, this is an administration who claim that they are absolutely committed to saving the Bahamian people money, and they've gone to great lengths to point out ways in which they believe we have squandered. In fact, the ill-fated attempt by the member for Carmichael talked about yesterday, and I thought, you were in good form, though you had bad information. So what the member for Carmichael said, Madam Speaker, is that $1.3 billion that we ran up this bill, and that we didn't have anything to show for it. And I believe we ended yesterday with me pointing out to him that at least 400 plus million of it was spent just on social assistance. Secondly, that we spent a substantial amount of money. I counted, last count was 200 and about 15 million just on capital works. But what I found stunning, and I thought about this last night, and I hate the fact that they had me up thinking about this, but Madam Speaker, several speakers on this side, they actually made the point that we had a hit after Dorian. We had a hit after Dorian of $3.4 billion. We had a hit during the pandemic of a similar amount, $3.4 billion. So we're talking about $6.8 billion that this administration is now using to explain to the hordes of people who they made promises to during the election why we can't take care of you. We can get to you. We ain't released that one yet, but maybe I'll come back to that. They have not been able to explain to supporters why we can't get to all these promises. So what is being used? What are we telling the public? We're telling the public we got a $6.8 billion hit. And yet the member for Carmichael came in this house to give the impression that we were not faced before them with these matters that adversely impacted revenue and debt. And so, Madam Speaker, it is important for us to be credible when we are making claims. But you know what the goal was? The goal was to simply make the case that there had to have been bad management or malfeasance. That's why you can't find $1 billion. But I mean, the Prime Minister made that point earlier that they couldn't find, and then to his credit, in his later presentation, the Prime Minister came back and acknowledged that this was undeclared spending, and so we were happy that he corrected the record. And so, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, San Salvador.
My point of order is that I never corrected any record because there's no record to correct. What I said was that their statement that was supposed to be put out just before the elections, right, was understated by $1 billion. The pre-election report was understated by about $1 billion. That still remained the case. Right? And what I did was to lay the document because it was being denied. The point I was making was that it wasn't that there was some underhanded thing. What I was saying is that it was a fraud on the country because the statement was incorrect and was there. And so it was not a matter of correction, it's a matter of me stating what the facts were, and then when I came back, being able to lay on the table the audited, the actual independent review of it, which confirmed the number. I think it was from KMPTA. It's KPMG, got an accounting firm to confirm what it was, and it was laid. So what was the correction?
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much. So again, we are happy to hear, because we have multiple headlines on that same subject, we are happy to hear that the Prime Minister said he was not suggesting, insinuating in any way that anything underhanded was done relative to the $1 billion. He was simply saying that it was not in the report. What we said from the beginning is that the report did not require the government to put in the report those particular obligations that had not yet been expensed. If we didn't get the invoice yet, and payment was not due, there was no need by law for it to be placed in the report. And so it was most unfortunate that that went around the world, because we had an opportunity to meet with one of the international agencies, and that was a matter they were concerned about. So by way of you to the Prime Minister, Madam President, Madam Speaker, we'd like to say thanks to the Prime Minister for correcting the public record that nothing untoward was done. So thank you very much. Let me also say, Prime Minister, still on the subject of BPL, because I know this is very, very important to you. This administration claims that it wishes to save the Bahamian people money. But yet, BPL is presently experiencing expenses that is due to the failure of this administration to continue to execute the hedge that was put in place by the Free National Movement. At that point, I believe we locked in the price per kilowatt to somewhere around 10.5 cents per kilowatt. And failure to lock in the price that we had on the global market, I think oil was for about $40 a barrel back then, failure to execute those trades resulted in the board, through its chairman, making the point that they have to pass through the additional costs to the consumer. I think it was something around 3.2 cents. The Prime Minister, because of the big heart that he has, intervened and told them, no, we can find another way to pay for it, but we will not pass it on. Now, we know by law, the government is obligated to pass on the costs. We know that the period that the government could eat those costs, I believe it has expired, or it's going to expire soon. And so we expect that this administration is now going to raise the price of electricity. And apart from the fact that they've already cost us $50 million, apart from that fact, we are now going to face higher electricity bills because of the failure of the New Day government to lock in the hedge. So, Prime Minister, it is our hope that you will take the time to explain whether or not this government is presently involved in a new hedge arrangement. How are you protecting the Bahamian people from the volatility on the international oil market? What are you doing to protect us? We also wish to understand, when it comes to BPL, is whether or not the government intends to continue to pursue the arrangement that was being developed with Shell Bahamas North America. Again, we look forward to hearing the Prime Minister on this matter. Shell North America. Madam Speaker, when we were in the chair, you had a 2-year period where you had predictability in the price of electricity. Unfortunately, failure to move on the hedge, we have now dismantled that. And that is at the feet of this administration. And so Prime Minister, we look forward to your presentation so that you are able to help the public understand what is your plan going forward. Madam Speaker, I'd like to turn my attention to NHI. But before doing so, there's a pressing matter concerning the health of the national insurance. For years, successive administrations knew that we were having problems in terms of the sustainability of national health insurance. The same thing is true as it relates to NHI. What I would like to know is whether or not the member for Pinewood speaks on behalf of the government when it comes to the National Insurance Board, or whether the Prime Minister is the chief spokesperson. We believe that rate hikes are coming, even though the Prime Minister says, no, it is not coming. By way of you, Madam President, Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield so that the Prime Minister can explain how he proposes to address the issue of the health. I have more than enough time. So, Prime Minister, if you would explain, because it's really a pressing matter. No. Oh, he's leaving. Oh, sorry. Okay. No, to explain to the public. To explain to the public. So, Madam Speaker, the difficulty that many members of the public have is there's a concern about the health of the fund. And I thought it was courageous of the member for Pinewood to talk about the challenges that the fund is having and to signal what may be happening. There seemed to be a disconnect in this cabinet. The Prime Minister says one thing, some other ministers say something else. The same was true about BPL, a disconnect. The same thing is true. The same thing is true about national insurance. There is a disconnect. So what is happening in the local market and in the international market is the Prime Minister's opinion is different than a number of his ministers and his financial secretary on a number of very significant issues. It is sending the wrong message, Madam Speaker, to the international community, to the credit community. And for all that this administration has talked about of the confidence they are engendering, it didn't improve the price of the bonds. It didn't improve this administration's ability to go to the local market as predicted by the members when they were in opposition. I believe the member for Exuma, the member for Kent Island had tremendous confidence. They chastised this administration for going overseas to borrow funds. They were going to go to the local market and they were going to attract resources to deal with the pressing issues. Today, Madam Speaker, the things they forecasted have not materialized. And a part of the reason, Madam Speaker, is multiple ministers are talking on the same subject but giving a different message. It is not a good thing. It sends the wrong message to the credit market. It sends the wrong message to the rating agencies, Madam Speaker. And so how are you going to fund national insurance? What is the plan of the New Day government? The New Day government mysteriously didn't mention a whole lot about the white paper that they presented to Parliament, quite impressive about digital assets. We know, because the member to my left, the member for East Grand Bahamas, as well as our former Deputy Prime Minister Turnquest, spent a tremendous amount of time making sure we brought the DARES Act in place. We know that cryptocurrency is thriving. Of course, the government has a very intimate relationship with a number of our investors, inclusive of them. And so, again, we help to give birth to a new industry. What we are unclear on is why the government did not spend any significant time looking at this additional pillar of our economy. Because if we are committed to diversification, we believe it is important that the government look at Grand Bahama seriously as a tech hub. I noticed that the Deputy Prime Minister, in all of his discussions, the member for Pine Ridge, have apparently moved away from Grand Bahama being the home of the tech hub. And we are curious as to what accounts for the shift in policy, knowing full well that we have tremendous potential in Grand Bahama to lead the way in terms of developing digital assets, developing a number of forms of technology. It was compellingly laid out by the member for East Grand Bahama. The other thing that was disappointing in this budget was that this administration has not outlined how they intend to service our debt. We are absolutely clear, based on this budget and the fact that you are unlikely to meet the revenue projections, that you will be borrowing more money in short order. I mean, that's not surprising. The member for Exuma and Ragged Island, in fact, made the point while he was in opposition that he thought we should borrow $2 billion. That's the correct figure? At least $2 billion. He thought we should go big. And I believe that incrementally we are now getting to the numbers that the member for Exuma and Ragged Island had in mind. The question, though, is, by law, looking at the Debt Management Act, we expect that the government would have appointed the committee. We know that the government has an informal committee, Madam Speaker, and the government is supposed to have an official committee. So we're asking the government to indicate, have you appointed the Debt Management Committee? Because again, failure to do so again sends the wrong message to the international community. Secondly then, has that committee met? Our understanding is that the informal committee, as well as the main committee, did not meet. And if in fact they met, why hasn't the government in this budget had any serious discussion about their debt management strategy? Because that is the point, Madam Speaker. If you do not have any fiscal space, you're affected in a number of ways. One, you have problems going back to the credit market to raise funds, and clearly that's the main pathway this administration is pursuing. And even when you go to the market, you're going to pay a higher interest rate to borrow money. We expected in this budget, and this is why I agree with the member for East Grand Bahama, there's a lot of it sounds good. It's talking about the themes that are important to people, but when you drill down on the details, it's not delivering the goods. That is a part of what the problem is we're facing. So in terms of the Debt Management Act, this government is failing the Bahamian people in talking about the pathway that they're going to put us on so that we can sustainably manage the finances of our country and to help us understand how they are going to service the national debt that we have. And so Madam Speaker, it is my hope that the Prime Minister, when he gets up to speak, that he would in fact address this very critical issue. Madam Speaker, the New Day government promised in the fiscal strategy report that one of the key things it would address is to reform state-owned enterprises. Madam Speaker, the government did the exact opposite. Instead of cutting costs, tightening the belt, given what we are up against as a country, this administration spent an additional $30 million that it made available to state-owned enterprises. While in opposition, there were a lot of brilliant ideas that the government had in terms of how to deal with it. Though agriculture is a smaller example, the government has made a decision to go back to managing packing houses, to go back to managing the feed mill. I am confident that in private sector hands, we would do a better job. Bahamians, we would do a better job managing packing houses, managing the feed mill, and what we can do is empower a group of Bahamians who can have a distribution system of their own, a food processing facility of their own, because they can double up in terms of food processing. But the philosophy of the Progressive Liberal Party is to hold on to these state-owned enterprises, to say in one document that they intend to gradually wean the country of the state-owned enterprises, but then seem to use them as a means of employment agency and quite possibly as a means of patronage. And so, Madam Speaker, I think that this administration is making a fundamental error in not having a realistic conversation with the Bahamian people about state-owned enterprises. And so as we go through this budget, Madam Speaker, that is one of the issues that worries members of the opposition, the government's failure to pause and address this critical issue rather than kick it down the road. Madam Speaker, even when the themes sound good, unfortunately, the devil is in the details. This government will not deliver in this budget. This government is big on PR. It has hired almost every journalist in the country, Madam Speaker. This government has spent, let me rephrase it. This government has this government has gone to various media houses and hired any number of competent Bahamians who are doing a good job for the government. The problem is the Bahamian people don't need PR, they need a government focus on HR, the human resources. And the difficulty is the government is spending more time on optics than actual substantive things that benefit constituencies. And that's why I mention nurses. That's why I mention educators. These are examples where the government got a lot of bombing on the desk. But to date, I think there's a strike vote that was taken by one of those groups as well, right after the budget. So obviously, the announcement was of no consequence. And so even where, and I love the line by the member for Seabreeze, I mean, I thought it was a very catchy line, that the government was on the right road. I used to like to say to be on the right road, headed in the right direction. And so let me say, I would borrow that for a moment to say, the government may be on the right road. Unfortunately, the pace at which the government is moving towards the things that can bring change is a little too slow. In Grand Bahama, there are persons who, despite spending, I believe, $15 million or so trying to help Dorian victims, for 9 months. For 9 months, we have persons whose roofs are still leaking in your home. I know you say you're from Nassau, but member for Tall Pines, many of your former constituents and my constituents, they are hurting because they are waiting for that first check to be signed, the first one. 2 years. First one. No, you missed the point. Over the 2 years, hundreds of Grand Bahamians were helped. I'm just saying that there are others who are waiting for that little thing. They are waiting for the Minister of Finance to empower the member for Pinewood so that we can touch some lives in Grand Bahama. So that's the point I'm making. I'm sorry? No. Pinewood is a member with responsibility for the DRA, and I know had he had the money, he would have been on it. So you are now acting Prime Minister since the Prime Minister left. I'm asking, by way of you, Madam Speaker, that the member for Exuma and Ragged Island look out for the people of Abaco and look out for the people of Grand Bahama in getting that first set of checks cut so that we can help persons. We are in the midst of a hurricane season. And so PR is not going to get that done. What we need is the checks to be cut. We also want to say that a number of things that are being done, they're necessary, but come on, stop beating the desk because they are insufficient. Something can be necessary, but not sufficient. And so it's important. No, it's not annoying me. I just think it's hurting people who are home wanting help, and instead they're hearing noise. Let me give you an example. There are mothers. There are mothers in each of our constituencies. There are mothers in each of our constituencies who are just trying to get survivor's benefit. But they're being told, we have evidence that the man didn't live in the house. in the last couple of years. I'm listening. And it's so troublesome because we know the story. We know that in some cases, the fella may have left. And then he hit hard time, where he can go? He come back home. In other cases, the sweetheart don't have no more use for him, so she sent him back home. Maybe he has an illness. She sent him back home. So there's a period so I'm saying, I want you to listen to me carefully. I don't know you if you're getting it in your constituency, but I am. Women whose husband left may have some non-communicable disease and he's now back home. She can't take care of him no more. Sweetie ain't can take care of him. So he comes back home. And even then, when she goes to try, when he passes away, this is members, this is a serious matter. In almost every one of our constituency, we have constituents, women, some of our mothers, sisters, daughters, who cannot get survivor's benefit. Yeah, but we are here to change policies that don't make sense. Because the truth of the matter is, she never left the marital home. He may have been gone for a short period of time. But when he comes back home, he dies in her care. We ought to make sure that she doesn't suffer. And so it is important that we solve that issue. We have children who are waiting to get benefit. And they're not getting the help. So how we manage this money. See, again, I mentioned you could be on the right road, but you don't move at the same pace. Social services under us and now under you, there is no new day. There is a dysfunction in the system. And we have to fix the dysfunction because help delayed is often help denied. And I believe there are members of parliament in here that you had constituents who were petitioning you for help in some area and you didn't get around to it. And you got a call. Just calling to let you know, mommy died last week or 2 days ago. Or you got around to it and you were calling a ministry, writing a ministry, and nothing materialized. And so it is absolutely important that this administration pay closer attention to the granular work on the ground, less attention to the optics. PR may be necessary, but it ain't sufficient. People need real help on this road, and they're hurting. And let me just say, because we heard the statement over and over in this debate, you all don't have no credibility. We heard it. I thought I addressed a part of it. When we were in government, 4 members were in opposition, 3 of whom are in this house. And one of the things I find amazing, and I said a part of it earlier, when 2 of them were in cabinet and things went wrong and there were scandals or there were issues in that administration, you didn't hear bo peep from any of them. What did they say? No, we have collective responsibility. But now they come in this house and try to convince that public that all of a sudden we have a conscience. We've always had a conscience. The question is, why didn't you speak then? Yeah, because you know there are some conventions in politics. You try to fight your battle sometimes inside. Now here's the other thing that you continue to say. That we are in no position to talk because some department in government or someone in the past government had some missteps, misdeeds, or whatever. Well, listen, that don't rob us of our ability to address issues, to speak truth to power. It didn't rob you in the past, and it ain't gonna rob us now. We are going to raise any issue we believe that is beneficial. Yeah. Oh, we have. And let me say to Angliston, let me say to Exuma, let me say to Cat Island, many a times, you all complimented a number of us for speaking truth to power. How in the world you did it then and now you come and switch up the game in here as if we weren't standing up, as if we weren't collaborative. I was in 2 ministries. I was in 2 ministries. Go and look in those ministries and tell me if you find 2 or more persons who we sent home because we thought they were PLP. Go and look. 2 ministries. You do it. No, you do it. Don't get distracted. The point is, you are the masters of deflection. The masters of deflection. And so my question is,
So
The chair recognizes the honorable member for English.
The member for the Dundas, or, I'm sorry, the member for Marco City.
Oh, I love it. I can do a point for you.
You trained me well, Marco City. Madam Speaker, when you sit in a cabinet, there's collective responsibility. You take responsibility, and you keep moving. You don't come in here and say, well, you know, I did this, and I could have do that, and I wasn't there, and it wasn't me. You take responsibility, you take your blows, and sometimes when people speak, and they send you home. That's how it works. So the member coming in now with this, with this convoluted description of things, you take responsibility. That's the rule. Take responsibility.
I know it wasn't a point of order, but you know, I have a lot. I have Anglison, let me say, I have a lot of time for you. You have demonstrated a commitment. You have demonstrated a commitment to this country over the years. I just want you to be balanced. You always ask for balance, but fail to demonstrate it in your communication. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying what you do. No,
The chair recognizes the
you don't
honorable member
concede.
for
I've
English.
never heard you concede once that the Progressive Liberal Party has done something wrong. Never once.
Madam Speaker, the member is, I don't know what he's talking about, but may I have the, thank you, in terms of what I am and who I am and why I'm this and that. I'm speaking, he just articulated a constitutional principle which was incorrectly expressed. You take responsibility. You don't come here now and trying to put distance between where you sat around the table, you were concurrent with it, and now come here with some different description. Take responsibility. That's the rule.
Thank you, honorable member.
Except we have done so in here, and we have also in cases where we believe there were ill-advised decisions, we've conceded it. All I am saying is let us be consistent. I have never, when I was in government or now, heard those who require that standard concede anything that they have ever done wrong. Ever. Even in cases where there were colleagues who were caught up in drama, I've never heard someone get up and say, as far as I'm concerned, let's let the chips fall where they may. No, it was you touch one, I remember. You touch one, you touch all.
Like now?
So my point is, my point is, one of the things, we don't duck and dodge. For example, Madam Speaker, we encourage this government to increase the salary for those civil servants who we were bombing the desk for, and prayerfully you're not doing it less than $100. Madam Speaker, I want to run through some numbers because members of the Progressive Liberal Party love to give the public the impression that they have a monopoly on doing work on behalf of vulnerable Bahamians. They do not have a monopoly. Did they start a number of fundamental or important institutions in this country? Of course. Some members of the Free National Movement in the early days came out of the PLP. So we don't knock our institutions. We celebrate them and help to build them. What we do take issue with is when in this place members come and give the impression that they care so much for the poor. But I can tell you, the persons in Marco City member for West End, who by several of your colleagues, including your self-admission, were not political animals. They home. Every single one of them gone. Pine Ridge was the first. Urban renewal centers all over this country. You know the answers? Well, this is what was done in 2017. I think this is the kind of things that sorry? Well, you tell me you may have kept one? Okay, no problem. So how many we had? Seven times 5 minus how many? 34? My point is that if you care about the poor and the vulnerable, why are you putting folks on the road $250, $300? Why are we doing it? So let me just give a bit of figures. The F&M was in government, and when we gave the first increase of $50 per month to the civil servants in 1993 and then 1994. A second increase of $100 per month was given in 1997. In 1999, an incremental increase was implemented. However, there hasn't been any since. Remember, this is the New Day government is the government for the poor. But when you look at the record does not bear out that the FNM has not been fighting for the poor. We all have. So this revisionist story that you continue to tell, these narratives that I just did. I mean, if you missed that example, God help us, right? And so again, it is our hope. It is our hope that this administration.
Honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member from Yamakro.
The member is misleading because if he's saying since 1999 a increase was not given, you need to check the record of 2016 where minimum wage was increased and increases to teachers at the time. I am well aware of that from the position I stood in before this place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honourable member.
Just like what you said, it'd be nice to study it. I'd be more than happy to look at it. Speaking about teachers, Madam Speaker. Speaking about teachers, Madam Speaker. A teacher's salary entry level is $25,200. For many years, this has remained the same. And so, Madam Speaker, there is a need for us to examine what we do with the public service and to make sure, Madam Speaker, in a substantive way, that we hit the bottom line of nurses' salaries, of teachers' salaries, and then also, Madam Speaker, we should be looking at various things like, for example, risk allowance. Nurses and teachers, we should find a way to put in place risk allowance at a level that assists them in a meaningful way. And so I think when we had $200, no, we ought to go $300 to $400 in terms of risk allowance to augment what we are providing to these categories of civil servants. So if this New Day government wish to get bombing on the desk that's meaningful, do something meaningful for educators. And so when you go to the meeting, or I believe some members may have left already for some of those meetings, it is important that we do something meaningful for these workers. And so, Madam Speaker, here's another thing we are able to do for struggling Bahamians. There are many workers in the public service who are entering as a clerk with 2 or more BGCSEs, and they have a salary of $13,950 who enter as clerks within the public service. Madam Speaker, a nurse with a bachelor's degree has a salary of $24,250 to $24,850 per year. Individuals with degrees who just returned home, Madam Speaker, would be lucky if they could make $30,000. And so, Madam Speaker, this government that has the right themes, a few missing, it's important that you do something serious, measurable, and significant, other than just getting applause from the converted because you mentioned the area and some broad, vague thing you intend to do for the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, right now, the court reporters are not in the courts. So it is important, I'm not moved by your chairs or your criticism. So Madam Speaker, it is important that we address the issue with the court reporters. They're out, and you haven't heard actually crickets again from this administration. So the budget is going on. Have we addressed the issue with the court reporters? Have we addressed the issue with the island administrators? Persons who went through 2 years, member for Central and South Eleuthera, and I know you didn't create this problem, but it exists now, my brother, where you have persons who went through 2 years of training. And now, because somebody make presumptions about their politics, they are now being sent back to where they came from, which first of all is ultra virus of the law in the public service. They should be promoted first if they have an objection and then sent back. So you have multiple administrators. I had an opportunity, I raised it with the Prime Minister, hoping that we could get resolutions. I'm getting every single week island administrators who are reaching out because they are concerned that folks who just came are being sorted out without the benefit of the same length of experience and training. We ought to correct that. And so it is important for us. We paused, police promotions were were paused. It's very interesting that, first of all, we should have done it. And that aside, this administration came in, and then some folks who were slated to be promoted, you didn't know what their politics were, all of a sudden mysteriously were no longer on the list. And this isn't no one ministry. Multiple ministry, this kind of practice is happening. And so, again, when you talk about New Day, the New Day should mean that there is new behavior in the kind of politics that you are engaged in. In the public service, again, if people do it in the past, that's on them. This is a new breed now. We ain't tribalistic in that way. We care about Bahamians in general. That's why we believe the Bahamian people will trust us, because they know whether they are FNM or PLP, that we are going to govern for all Bahamians. But they know that this administration isn't. People are afraid. People are afraid. And so, Madam Speaker, we are concerned that in the public service, for example, there are persons who can only be promoted if they pass these exams. Well, some of our people in the public service are in no position to pass some of these exams, but they have experience and they can execute the job that they have been executing for years. So in much the same way, in some areas in government, we are able to grandfather persons in. We did it with contractors and several other vocational areas. We ought to look at promoting people who've been on the job, been successful, passed their evaluation. The only thing missing is that they couldn't pass a written exam. So some of our people are stuck. How could it be 20 years on the job? No promotion? I mean, that can't be right. And so I believe that you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to do something meaningful in that regard. And so, Madam Speaker, we've heard a lot about the travel of this administration. Let's be clear. And the member for St. Barnabas, I thought, phrased it appropriately. Any mature politician knows that ministers of the government and other technical officers have to travel to build relationships. But here's the problem. The New Day government came in and sought to create a narrative. You know, like the way you create the narrative on you care about the poor and we don't. The FNM is corrupt and the PLP is the paragon of virtue. In a similar way, you sought to create well, one and done. You sought to create the impression that the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister and ministers of the government are now reconnecting the Bahamian people with the international market. Because obviously in your mind, or your PR consultant's mind, that is a good story to tell to justify whatever it is you're seeking to justify. But what is true, and you know it because you are in the ministries where you could see the record. The Prime Minister traveled, the former Prime Minister traveled, he went to the UN and spoke on climate change. That's why many of us are still talking about quoting the head of the General Assembly who talked about the existential crisis that we face because of catastrophes like Dorian. Before him, Prime Minister Christie, and before him, Prime Minister Ingram, all at varying times, sometimes with ministers in tow or separate, attended global forums and had discussions about the fact that we are in a hurricane alley, and we had recommendations. In fact, those of us who've been monitoring what has been going on in the country know that the Bahamas had one of the most compelling voices over both administrations, talking about how unfair it was to put us in the category as a medium income country, to disqualify us from receiving benefits and assistance from international organizations or other governments by virtue of our per capita income, when the reality is we have greater vulnerabilities because we are a small island state that is in a zone that is prone to catastrophe. We've made this argument. So our concern isn't about so much the travel. I'm going to come to what the concern is. One is, don't misrepresent or distort the record. Because after Dorian, many of us traveled to agencies or to forums overseas, massive global forums, and came back with results, with resources and technical assistance to assist the Bahamian people in the aftermath of Dorian. So it's no need, I mean, we're mature people. There's no need to pretend as if like you have just cut a brand new path in the universe. It's not a new path. It's a continuation. I love how you are supporting the Prime Minister. I was proud the Prime Minister speaking at these forums. That's our Prime Minister. But let us not be revisionist. Let us not cast him as doing something fundamentally different than his predecessors. Because every single one of them, Dr. Hubert Minnis, Perry Christie, Hubert Ingram, all of them did what he is now seeking to do. What some of them have forgotten, the Prime Minister today is still learning. And it's no disrespect to him, it's just that he is new to what has been done. So that's one thing. So you are not reconnecting us to anything. We never disconnected from the international community. Secondly, this country has a stellar record pre the 16th of September 2021 in terms of good stewardship of the environment. We have NGOs who I salute who have been doing an incredible job in this country, as well as government agencies. So whether it's the Bahamas National Trust, the Nature Conservancy, or BRIEF, all of these organizations, water keepers, a whole bunch of them have been doing incredible work. And they have been raising substantial resources while working in partnership with government, because oftentimes international agencies want to know that government is on board. And they've been doing an incredible job raising resources in the Bahamas. And so we are very much concerned that you are now rewriting history to give the impression that you are now doing something fundamentally different. Let's just keep it moving. This is just continuity. We support the work that you are doing on the climate change agenda. But don't use that, because what you do is you turn people off from the agenda when you're using the travel that you're doing, and this is a justification. You know what people have questioned about the travel? They've questioned size of delegations. All of us who've managed ministries or corporations, we know that if we're going, for example, to Eleuthera, and we're doing an assessment of several properties, or the function of a particular ministry, then we know they ain't necessary to carry 8 people. I mean, be clear on that. If we go into the Far East or the Middle East, we know we don't need 18 or 16 persons, because you know the thing called train the trainer? Like sometimes you carry the head of the department, and the head of the department is able to educate some other people through a report. And you're good at giving communication, so a wider audience is educated on the value, the purpose of the trip, and the potential benefits. So people are concerned sometimes about size. They're also concerned about whether or not your seniority is required at a meeting where you show up as a minister and everybody else there is an ambassador or a senior officer in the ministry. So they're just saying, you know, just like you, many of you are quite wealthy, you've been traveling before politics. I don't believe for a moment this is just a come up for you. But what we're saying is, you know, when you arrive, you're trying to figure out why sitting here with the fellow who have to go back and ask for permission when you're the only one at the table who could make a decision right then on behalf of the government, because you could call the PM and say, PM, they're doing this conference, we want to bring the conference in, we believe it's beneficial. That's the reality. People ain't slow. So they seeing this and they trying to figure out, I'm leaving my corner to go to social service to try and get this rent assistance or a voucher, and I find that I ain't on the program no more because they say it's a scarcity of resources, and somebody in the house is a reservist, but there's 5 people in the house, everybody else is unemployed, and the reservist just about to get married. So they even could be in the house. And they would say, hold on, that dude in first class, or a fella is on a jet, when jet ain't supposed to be on. And yet, these people can't get a voucher. I was happy to hear when one of the members on your side said people will be able to get emergency rent assistance, because the reality is we are consistently paying for persons who have a domestic situation, and we're putting them up in hotel, and then we have the discomfort after 3 days of trying to find something else for them. And you know, member of parliament will be in a position, or the church who we enlist as partners, getting somebody out of a hotel because people ain't want to leave no more. So when we talk about travel, we're asking you, what is your priority? Sometimes you have to say, rather than an $18,000 ticket, I can demonstrate that I'm prepared to sit in economy, but in an exit seat, I still have the leg room. I can still do my chair back. And you in the airport, just park some snacks. Because things rough on this road. But you're not prepared to tighten your belt, because there are more loans that we can get to pay for the things. Because obviously, your revenue projections, every respectable agency says, given the issues with inflation, given the challenges we are having in terms of supply chain issues, given your debt to GDP ratio, every agency is saying headwinds that are coming, the likelihood of you being able to raise the kind of money you're projecting is slim. Now, we hope, we know God is amazing. And if we submit ourselves to God, He can intervene into our affairs and some transformative things can happen in the Bahamas. However, if God, through His intentional will, don't get involved, but He permits you to run the programs that are important to you, we are saying the likelihood of you getting to the finish line is slim. So since it's slim, that you're not going to raise the $1.3 billion. The question, all things are possible. But did you tell that to the voters? Did you see, because here's the issue. The issue is you cannot and you should not make future commitments predicated on the possibility of revenue that is unrealistic for you to achieve. That's the problem. So that's why the member for East Grand Bahama could say you're being reckless. He wasn't being disrespectful. What he was saying is, we didn't see the play. We didn't see what the CEO for JP Morgan said. We didn't hear what the member for Exuma and Ragged Island said when he was in opposition. And the man, he knows he's sitting there and he said, boy, Jesus, if we pull this one off, that'll be a miracle. That's what he said inside. He knows that the projections are off. He knows the projections are off. That's why he puts on his game face when he come in here, because he said, I have to brazen truth, knowing that this thing ain't possible. So we are saying,
the chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, today I spoke for 2 hours. Exuma is capable of speaking for himself. And I asked the member not to mislead and suggest any language or any wording for this member. Whatever I wish to say, Madam Speaker, I need no help.
Thank you, honourable member.
I know it wasn't a point of order, but you know, Exuma, I'm always proud.
I just wanted you to get it.
Yeah, I'm always proud of Bahamians who have pulled themselves up by their own bootstrap and making a contribution. And and as the next leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, I want to be respectful to you. But Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, he's appealing for validation, Madam Speaker. He's appealing for validation. Madam Speaker, as I take my seat, Madam Speaker, what concerns us about the budget has been clearly laid out by our team. That the government has projected revenues that we do not see how they are able to reach. They've heard from rating agencies that says that they are overly optimistic. They've heard from local economists and accountants who have evaluated the budget and thought that a number of wonderful themes are in there, but when you drill down on the details, there are certain key things that are missing. No strategy for debt management. Insufficient additional pillars for the economy that demonstrate that they have a growth strategy in order to expand the economy, to absorb the unemployment that we have and the more of the students who are going to come out of school. Again, insufficient examples of linkages between the most productive sector of the economy, which is tourism, and other areas. And we did leave in place to assist. working with tourism, the Agro-Tourism Council, which we believe will be very, very beneficial. We listened to the message delivered by the member for Central and South Eleuthera, and we remain steadfast that we are prepared to collaborate and be helpful. We listened to the bombs on the table, but we understand that you were busy, most of you, maybe 90% of you in your private life when we were in government, and so you may have missed it. But I brought with me the list of conclusions that under the Free National Movement, decisions were made that form, I'm sorry? No, I'm saying all of the decisions that we made is documented in the programs that we put up. And so the decisions are right here, okay? And so I'm saying to you, just focus, that 95+% of the presentation made by the Minister of Agriculture, we had no difficulty with. Because those initiatives were initiatives that we worked on. So let me run through very, very quickly. Purchase and distribution of layer birds. Agreement to set in place infrastructure and ecosystem for the development of the poultry industry. Hiring. So, distribution of backyard gardening kits, more than 20,000 of those kits. Provision of livestock feed to farmers. Land clearing exercise. Cabinet permission for 40% of all hotels, food stores are mandated by policy to buy from Bahamian farmers. 75 cents of every dollar spent by government ought to be spent with local producers. We spent more than $5 million on farmers and fishers post-Dorian and in the midst of COVID. You know, again, time doesn't, but we will table this, Madam Speaker, and this is a partial list capturing the period July 2020 to May 2021. And I will lay for future reference every presentation I made in this House, midterm report, national report, etc. We will lay those in the House. We worked with the Bahamas Development Bank, looking at various options to collaborate on mutually developing agriculture. Here's what we didn't do. We didn't do what the minister is now doing, setting up an agribusiness department. The agribusiness department is a bad idea. BAIC is your agribusiness department. To set up a new agribusiness department is to duplicate resources when that gentleman, Brother Major, and his team are adequate in terms of executing your various business arrangements. Let me just show you. Before I left, I think there's 161 persons work there. Think about this for a moment. You can set up a new department. You already have about 161, and I think you all added another 161. And so the point is, it is unnecessary. And so while you may have changed a plant or production generation house, the point I'm making is this. We are in support of what the minister is doing. I'm only pointing out that 95% plus are those things that we have done. That's the only point I'm making. Yeah, sure.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Central and South.
I don't intend for agriculture to be a political football, right?
That's right.
But, however, a lot of the initiatives that we're doing is new. I can list some of them if you want me to. I can list some of them. So, no, your time ain't running. So, $1.3 million in grants for farmers through SBDC. No. This is a new initiative through us.
Members.
We are creating a poultry industry through land and other concessions, inclusive of electricity concessions, to create a poultry industry, right? Over $6 million in food security.
It's not on your paper.
3 dozen food items to be made duty-free to reduce prices in grocery stores. No. But the thing is, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources and Family Island Affairs is very focused in creating bankable products for the people in this country. We eliminated the duty on parts for farmers as well as fishermen. So the thing to say that no, you never did it. Never did it. No, never did it. But it's not correct for the member of Marco City. And the difference is results. The difference is results. It's one thing to talk it, another thing to do it.
Member for by way of you, Madam Chair, we are not on different sides. In fact, I remember when you were in the Senate that I briefed the shadow in the House and the shadow in the Senate, because when we did major initiatives, we sought to always include members opposite, right? So every time we visited your island, we also made sure you come out so you could be aware. So I'm just saying, we will support you. You're a member of the family. We will stand with you. We'll support you. But what we don't want you to do is don't waste the taxpayers' money. And I'm telling you, BAIC is your agribusiness department. Don't waste your money. The second thing you don't want to do is seek to run a feed mill when you have experts. Empower some of the farmers. Challenge the farmers to take possession of the feed mill. Put the challenge out to them. And so all we're saying to you, member, that we wish you well because it's in our interest. The final thing I'll say on agriculture, oh, by the way, don't hire an architect for Porterski. You have all the drawings on file from Ministry of Works and otherwise. It's a waste of money. And if the ministry is going to hire, if you're going to hire, we'll be very concerned about that because you don't need an independent architect. So just to mention that. And if so, we will know who, because it isn't necessary. So let me say this. The final thing I'd say is you are, no, you shouldn't. You have the drawings. You don't need to hire him. Let me say this. I said earlier, there is a need for us to demonstrate a sense of urgency. And so I want to say to this administration, I must tell you, I sat here, I saw a Minister of Agriculture second the budget, and I said, this is a wonderful thing, and then you turned the budget, and then you fought the budget. Look at the thing, I'm saying the three speakers that followed the Prime Minister was from this ministry. So maybe the motive and the optics was powerful. No, follow what I'm saying. Don't get defensive. Look at your budget. Look at the budget. Your budget is not substantially different than before, right? No, and so we can talk about execution, etc. All I'm saying is what you have been given will have a negligible impact on food security. That's the point I'm making. So I'm supporting you by say to your Minister of Finance that positioning me in the speaking order is a wonderful thing. Making sure I have real resources to touch people who have real needs is a demonstration that you appreciate that food security is a problem in the Bahamas. That's the point that I'm making. Because $1 million in Family Island agriculture could go to one farmer to buy some equipment, and then it's gone. This is like the $10 million in the budget for catastrophic health. Two bad illnesses, that went over. 10 million gone. That's the best case scenario, by the way. The worst case scenario is 10 million in the hands of a Minister of Health. If he does not have the checks and balance, then that one is a problem. We want to make sure, and we are hoping in that presentation, that the $10 million goes to a committee so that no particular individual has control of it. And so I would like to hear the structure. We were trying to figure out, member for Tall Pines, how is that structured? How is that going to be disbursed to the public? Because we want to make sure, that at the end of the day, there is a committee making a determination of which people who face catastrophic illnesses get help. We don't want one or two persons making that kind of determination on who lives and who dies. We need a transparent system. Similarly, the former administration had a program similar to what you're talking about in creating a fund for Family Island development. What we are concerned about is funds that are going into this special purpose vehicle that you have in mind. Hopefully you are creating a structure that has rules of its own. Because any taxes collected according to our laws, it has to go into the consolidated fund. And so one of the challenges you have with the budget is there's a lot of nice fuzzy ideas and themes. But when you drill down on them, the details and the meat just isn't there. And so the bombing is encouraging, because what you're doing is you're reinforcing each other as good colleagues. But the reality is, the meat that is needed to execute on behalf of the Bahamian people, it simply isn't there. That's why the nurses were thinking about striking. That's why the Ministry of Education right now wants you to man and woman up to make sure that you support their interests. It just isn't there. No, they're there. No. And so